Have you ever walked away from a conversation more confused than when it started? Like somehow, you ended up apologizing, even though you were the one who got hurt. That's not an accident, that's a strategy. Narcissists use one specific psychological trick to make you question your own memory, your own feelings, even your own sanity. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Here's exactly what it is and how to protect yourself. Narcissists do not argue with your facts. They argue with your perception of your facts. That is the trick. That is the entire architecture of the manipulation in one sentence. And if you have ever been in a close relationship with a narcissist, whether romantic, family, professional, or social, you have experienced exactly this, and you have probably spent months or years trying to understand why you consistently left conversations with this person feeling like the ground beneath your understanding of reality had been quietly moved while you were standing on it. Not dramatically moved, not in ways you could point to immediately, but moved enough that by the end of the conversation you were no longer certain of things you had been certain of when the conversation began. Certain of what you said, certain of what they said, certain of what happened, certain of what you felt and whether what you felt was a reasonable response to what actually occurred or an overreaction produced by your own deficiency, your sensitivity, your insecurity, your history, your problem. This is the trick. It has a clinical name, gaslighting, but the name has been used so broadly and so loosely in popular culture that it has lost some of its precision. And precision is exactly what you need to protect yourself from it. Because you cannot defend against a mechanism you cannot see clearly. And the mechanism is more specific, more deliberate, and more psychologically sophisticated than the word gaslighting, now attached to everything from minor disagreements to genuine abuse, has come to suggest. What narcissists are doing when they employ this trick is not simply lying. Lying is a relatively straightforward mechanism. A person says something false. You either believe it or you do not. The damage is contained. What narcissists are doing is something architecturally different. They are not replacing your reality with a false reality. They are destabilizing your access to your own reality. They are attacking not the content of what you know, but the instrument you use to know it. Your perception, your memory, your emotional responses, your judgment, the very faculties through which you access and make sense of your own experience. When those faculties are successfully destabilized, when you can no longer trust what you saw or heard or felt or remember, you become dependent. Dependent on an external source to tell you what is real. And the external source available to you in that relationship is the person who destabilized your faculties in the first place. The narcissist becomes the authority on your own experience. And that authority is the most total form of control that one human being can exercise over another. This is not hyperbole. This is mechanism. And understanding it with this precision is the beginning of the only protection that actually works. Let us go into the specific tricks within the trick, because gaslighting as practiced by narcissists is not one move. It is a repertoire of moves, each targeting a different aspect of your self-trust, each designed to create a specific form of doubt that compounds with the other forms until the aggregate is a person who has lost confidence in their own mind. The first move is the denial of stated fact. You say something happened. The narcissist says it did not with evidence, not with a counteraccount that is more detailed or more plausible than yours, simply with the flat, absolute, completely unfazed assertion that what you remember did not occur. You said you would be home by 8. I never said that. You told me last week that the meeting was canceled. I never told you that. You agreed to this in front of everyone at the table. That is not what I said, and that is not what I agreed to. The denial is delivered with a quality of certainty that is disorienting, because it does not match the quality of certainty available to someone who is simply lying. A person who knows they are lying about a stated fact carries some version of the lie in their body, some slight quality of management, some tell that a perceptive observer can detect. The narcissist's denial carries none of this because the narcissist is not, in their own psychological framework, lying. They are asserting their version of reality with the absolute conviction of someone who genuinely believes that their version is the version, that the conversation happened the way they say it happened because they say it happened that way. The version they are asserting is real because they are asserting it. This quality of conviction is what makes the denial so effective. You expected resistance, but you expected resistance that had the quality of someone defending a position. What you got instead was resistance that had the quality of someone reporting an obvious fact. The flatness of the certainty, the slight note of confusion or even concern for you that they have to correct such a basic misunderstanding. Are you sure? That is not what happened. I think you might be misremembering. And in the gap between your certain memory and their certain denial, the first seed of doubt is planted. Not certainty of doubt, just the opening, just the question. Am I misremembering? The question has been placed in you. It will grow. The second move is the reframing of your emotional responses as evidence of your dysfunction. You feel hurt by something they said. The narcissist does not address what they said. They address the fact that you feel hurt, and they address it in terms that locate the problem entirely within you. You are too sensitive. You always do this. You always make everything into a drama. I cannot say anything to you without you having a breakdown. You have serious issues with insecurity, and this is just another example of them. The sophistication of this move is in what it accomplishes simultaneously. It avoids any engagement with the content of what they said or did that produced your emotional response. The actual event, the actual words, the actual behavior disappears from the conversation. In its place, your emotional response to that event becomes the subject. And your emotional response is framed not as a natural and reasonable reaction to something real that happened, but as a symptom of a pre-existing pathology. Something you brought to the situation. Something that was going to happen regardless of what they said or did, because the problem is not the stimulus. The problem is you. Over time, this move produces one of the most devastating effects of narcissistic abuse. The person on the receiving end stops bringing their emotional responses to the relationship, not because the responses have resolved, because they have learned that bringing them produces not care or repair but diagnosis. Every time they express hurt or anger or confusion, they receive a mirror held up to their dysfunction rather than any engagement with the cause of the feeling. They begin to self-monitor before speaking, to evaluate their own emotional responses for reasonableness before expressing them, to hold the internal debate that the narcissist has successfully installed in them. Am I being too sensitive? Is this actually a big deal, or am I making it a big deal? Is this about what just happened, or is this about my issues? This internal debate is the narcissist, living rent-free in the most intimate space of the other person's psychology, conducting the same conversation internally that they used to conduct externally. The gaslighting has been internalized. The person is now doing it to themselves. The third move is the selective use of memory. The narcissist does not simply deny facts. They maintain a selective archive of the relationship that consistently favors their position and consistently undermines yours. They remember with extraordinary precision and detail every instance of your failures, your emotional outbursts, your mistakes, your moments of weakness or irrationality. They produce these memories in arguments with the specificity of someone reading from a document. The date, the exact words, the context, the pattern these individual incidents reveal. They have no memory at all of their own equivalent behavior, the times they lost their temper, the promises they broke, the things they said that you cannot unhear. These events exist in your memory with equal clarity and specificity. They exist in the narcissist's account of the relationship as things that either did not happen, happened differently than you remember, happened in understandable response to your provocations, or were resolved long ago, and your continued reference to them is evidence of your inability to move forward. The asymmetry of this selective archive is one of the most consistent features of narcissistic relationships, and it produces a specific distortion in the shared reality of the relationship over time. The history of the relationship as maintained by the narcissist is a history in which their behavior is consistently reasonable and yours is consistently problematic. The relationship's problems have a single origin, and that origin is you. Your sensitivity, your history, your needs, your demands, your dysfunction. And because the narcissist maintains this archive with such consistency and such apparent certainty, and because you have been sufficiently destabilized by the other moves to no longer fully trust your own recollection, the archive begins to feel more authoritative than your own memory. You begin to reference their version of the history because yours has been so consistently contested that it no longer feels reliable. You have ceded the historical record of your own life to the person most invested in distorting it. The fourth move is the recruitment of external validation. This move is where gaslighting expands beyond the private relationship and into the social reality around it. The narcissist understands at some level that the most powerful way to make you doubt your own perception is to ensure that you are surrounded by people who confirm their version of reality rather than yours. They do this through the long-term management of your shared social environment, through the gradual, patient, entirely deniable work of shaping how the people around you perceive you. They share selective information about you with mutual friends, family members, colleagues, not outright fabrications necessarily. Carefully chosen truths presented in the framing that produces the specific impression they need produced. The truth that you have been struggling emotionally, the truth that the relationship has been difficult, the truth that they have been patient and concerned and trying everything they can, all of this technically accurate, all of it framed to establish, in the minds of the people who surround you, a narrative in which you are the unstable one, the difficult one, the one whose perception of events cannot be fully trusted. When you then attempt to share your experience of the relationship with these people, you encounter the resistance of a pre-existing narrative. They have already been given a frame, and the frame filters what you say. Your account of what is happening in the relationship is received not as new information, but as further evidence of the instability that has already been reported. The people you most need to support your reality have been made into unwitting instruments of the gaslighting, and you are now more isolated in your experience than you were before you tried to break the isolation. The fifth move is the intermittent reinforcement of reality. This is the most psychologically sophisticated move in the repertoire, and the one that creates the deepest and most durable damage, because the narcissist does not consistently gaslight. They gaslight intermittently. Between the episodes of reality distortion, there are episodes of what feels like genuine clarity, genuine warmth, genuine acknowledgement of your experience. Moments where the narcissist appears to see you accurately, to validate your perception, to be exactly the person you needed them to be. These moments are not necessarily calculated. They may be genuine in their way. The narcissist is not always manipulating consciously. Sometimes the warmth is real. Sometimes the validation is real. Sometimes the version of them that you fell in love with or chose to trust is genuinely present. And these moments of genuine presence serve, whatever their source, the same function as calculated intermittent reinforcement serves in behavioral psychology. They keep you in the relationship. They provide enough confirmation that your perception of reality is valid, enough evidence that the person you believed existed does actually exist, to prevent you from leaving, to give you a reason to stay and try, to produce the hope that the clear moments will become the consistent experience rather than the exception. The intermittency is the trap. If the gaslighting were consistent, if every moment were the distortion, you would leave. The distortion would become the only available reality, and you would eventually choose to exit it. But the intermittent nature of it keeps you cycling between the experience of being seen and the experience of being made to doubt your sight. And the cycling, maintained over sufficient time, produces a psychological state that has a specific clinical profile. Anxiety, hypervigilance, chronic self-doubt, difficulty trusting your own perceptions, a baseline level of confusion about reality that has nothing to do with any intrinsic limitation of your mind, and everything to do with having been systematically trained by someone with enormous influence over your reality, not to trust it. Now let us talk about what happens in the body during gaslighting. Because one of the most important things you can understand about this form of manipulation is that your body registers it accurately long before your mind has processed what is happening. The body keeps the score in the specific way that it always keeps the score when the environment is producing chronic threat without a clear external source of the threat. The threat is relational. It is coming from someone who is simultaneously the source of care and the source of danger. Someone whose closeness is both what you need and what produces the confusion. And the body, unable to resolve this contradiction through the normal mechanisms of threat response, because the threat does not have the clear external form that the threat response evolved to deal with, produces a chronic low-level activation state. A persistent undercurrent of anxiety that has no specific object. A hypervigilance that scans the relational environment for signs of the next shift. A physical tension that lives in the body even in the moments when the relationship is in one of its clear phases. This physical state is itself one of the effects of the gaslighting, not a separate phenomenon, but part of the manipulation's consequence. The chronic anxiety makes it harder to think clearly. The hypervigilance consumes cognitive resources that would otherwise be available for the clear perception the narcissist is working to prevent. The physical tension is the body holding the contradictions that the mind is not being allowed to resolve. The body is doing the work of maintaining the truth that the relationship is working hard to make unavailable. This is why one of the first steps in recovering from narcissistic gaslighting is learning to read and trust the body's signals again. Before the mind has processed what is happening, before the intellectual understanding has assembled itself, the body already knows. The stomach that tightens before a conversation. The shoulders that rise before the narcissist speaks. The specific quality of dread that arrives even in the good moments, because the body has learned that the good moments precede the next episode of reality distortion. The body is not lying to you. The body was never lying to you. It was one of the few instruments the gaslighting could not fully reach. Now let us talk about what actually protects you, not in a general sense, in the specific, practical sense of what works against this specific mechanism. The first protection is the external record. Because the primary target of gaslighting is your memory and your perception, the most direct protection is the creation of a record that exists outside your memory and outside the relationship. Written records of conversations, dated notes about what was said and what was agreed to, saved messages and emails that preserve the stated version of events at the time of their occurrence, not because you are building a legal case necessarily, because you are creating a version of reality that cannot be unilaterally rewritten by someone else's assertion. This record serves two functions: the practical function of providing evidence when your memory is contested, and the psychological function of providing an anchor, a fixed point in the reality that is being destabilized, something you can return to when the gaslighting has done enough work that you are no longer certain of your own recollection. Something that says you were there, this happened, you were not mistaken, you were not too sensitive, your perception was accurate. Here is the evidence of its accuracy, preserved in writing before anyone had the opportunity to contest it. The second protection is the trusted external witness. One of the most important things the gaslighting works to eliminate is your access to people who will consistently confirm your perception of reality rather than the narcissist's version of it. The recruitment of your social environment to the narcissist's narrative is the most direct form of this elimination. And the most direct counter to it is the maintenance of at least one relationship, ideally more, with people who have not been reached by that narrative. People whose knowledge of you predates the relationship with the narcissist. People who have observed the relationship with sufficient access and sufficient independence to provide a reality check that has not been contaminated. These relationships are the most important resource you have in a gaslighting dynamic, not because the external witness can tell you what is real in some absolute sense, but because the consistent experience of being accurately perceived by someone outside, the relationship provides the contrast necessary to recognize the distortion inside it. When someone who is not invested in your self-doubt consistently validates your perception, consistently confirms that what you saw is what happened, consistently treats your emotional responses as reasonable rather than pathological, the gaslighting begins to lose its grip. Not immediately, not completely, but the counter-narrative takes root, and the counter-narrative is simply the truth. The third protection is the reclamation of your emotional responses as valid data. One of the most important things the narcissist has successfully done, if the gaslighting has been effective, is to separate you from your own feelings as reliable information about your situation. You have been trained to evaluate your feelings for dysfunction before acting on them, to treat them as symptoms rather than signals, as problems to be managed rather than information to be read. The reclamation begins with a simple but radical act, treating your feelings as innocent until proven guilty rather than guilty until proven innocent. The feeling arrived. Something produced it. The fact that someone in your life has a long-standing narrative in which your feelings are the problem does not make the narrative true. The feeling is data. It is telling you something about your experience. The question is not whether the feeling is valid. It is valid. The question is what it is telling you and whether you are willing to receive the information. This reclamation is not permission to act on every feeling without reflection. It is the restoration of your feelings to their proper place in your perceptual system, as one of the primary instruments through which you access and understand your own experience, an instrument that was working accurately before it was deliberately destabilized, an instrument that, once restored to its proper function, will tell you things about your situation that your thinking mind, still carrying the contamination of the gaslighting, may not yet be ready to receive. The fourth protection is the clear naming of the pattern. There is a specific psychological effect that comes from naming what is happening to you with precision, not naming it to the narcissist, who will contest the name and use its use as further evidence of your dysfunction, naming it to yourself, in the privacy of your own mind or in the safety of a therapeutic or trusted relationship. The name creates a frame, and the frame does something the gaslighting actively works to prevent. It makes the manipulation legible as manipulation rather than as the natural consequence of your perception problem. When you can say this specific move, this specific pattern of response, this specific way my reality is being contested, has a name and a known mechanism and a known effect, you have restored a crucial piece of your access to your own experience. The manipulation requires your confusion to maintain its effectiveness. It depends on you experiencing each episode as isolated, as possibly your fault, as possibly evidence of the dysfunction you have been trained to believe you carry. The name connects the episodes, makes them a pattern, and patterns, once visible, cannot be unseen. The fifth and most fundamental protection is the rebuilding of trust in your own perception. Everything else we have discussed, the records, the external witnesses, the reclamation of emotional responses, the naming of the pattern, all of it is in service of this. The restoration of your relationship with your own mind, the recovery of the basic human capacity to trust what you saw, what you heard, what you felt, what you remember, without requiring external confirmation before allowing yourself to act on it. This restoration takes time. If the gaslighting has been thorough and sustained, the self-doubt it produced has settled deeply into the way you process experience. It does not lift immediately because the information about the manipulation has arrived. The body of evidence that was used to build the self-doubt was assembled over a long time, and the rebuilding is done through the same mechanism. The accumulation of experiences in which your perception was accurate, in which your feelings were appropriate, in which your memory was correct, in which the instrument of your own mind, trusted and tested against reality, was found to be reliable. Every time you trust your perception and it proves accurate, the trust deepens slightly. Every time you treat your feelings as valid data and the data proves sound, the instrument is restored slightly. Every time you maintain your account of what happened against the pressure to revise it, and the account proves to be the accurate one, the confidence in your own reality grows slightly. This is the slow, unspectacular, entirely individual work of recovering from a manipulation that was designed to make you doubt the most fundamental thing available to any human being, the reliability of their own mind. That reliability was never actually lost. It was obscured, buried under a systematic campaign to make you question it so thoroughly that you would stop using it as an independent guide to reality and start using the narcissist instead. The instrument still works. It worked through the entire relationship. It was producing accurate readings even when you were most convinced it was broken. The body knew. The feelings knew. The memory that was consistently contested was consistently correct. You knew you always knew. The work now is simply the patient, daily practice of learning to trust that knowing again.